Handsome millionaire marries an obese woman as a bet and is surprised when. Hello and welcome to 80s Love Stories, where I, your favorite narrator, Christopher, bring you an exciting love story straight from the unforgettable 1980s. Get ready for a journey full of nostalgia and incredible twists. Today's story is truly remarkable, with an ending that's sure to touch your heart and leave you amazed. So, stay with me until the very last moment. I hope this experience is unforgettable for you, and may God bless you and your family. Now, let's get started. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of the exclusive gentleman's club as Marcus Rothwell adjusted his platinum cufflinks, a gesture that had become as natural to him as breathing. At 35, he possessed the kind of wealth that opened every door, and the kind of arrogance that slammed them shut just as quickly. His perfectly tailored suit couldn't hide the emptiness that had settled in his chest like winter frost, but tonight, surrounded by his equally privileged friends, he wore his indifference like armor. "You're getting soft, Marcus," jeered his longtime friend Harrison, swirling his aged whiskey. "Remember when you used to take real risks? Now you just play it safe with your billions." The other men at their usual table nodded in agreement, their faces flushed from expensive liquor and the thrill of comparing conquests. Marcus had heard it all before, the accusations that success had made him predictable, that his heart had turned to ice along with his business dealings. "Soft?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, his voice carrying that dangerous edge his business rivals knew too well. "What exactly are you suggesting, Harrison?" "A bet," Harrison replied, leaning forward with the gleam of mischief in his eyes. "Something that would prove you still have that fire that built your empire. Something that would shock even us." The table fell silent, except for the gentle clink of ice against glass. Marcus could feel the weight of their expectations, the challenge hanging in the air like smoke. "Name it," Marcus said, his tone flat but his pulse quickening despite himself. Harrison's grin widened. "Marry someone completely opposite to your usual type. Someone who would make society gasp. Someone who would prove that the great Marcus Rothwell can still surprise us all." "That's hardly a challenge," Marcus scoffed. "I could marry any actress or model tomorrow." No. Harrison wagged his finger. "I'm talking about someone genuinely different. Someone who doesn't fit your world at all. Someone who would make your mother faint at the wedding." The other men chuckled, but there was something serious underlying their amusement. They'd all watched Marcus become increasingly isolated, building walls around his heart as high as his financial empire. "And what do I get when I win this ridiculous bet?" Marcus asked, though he already felt the familiar rush of a challenge coursing through his veins. "Recognition that you're still the Marcus we used to know," Harrison replied. "Plus, I'll sign over that vineyard in Tuscany you've been wanting, the one I swore I'd never sell." Marcus's eyes flashed with interest. The vineyard had been in Harrison's family for generations, and Marcus had been trying to acquire it for business purposes for years. It would complete his luxury resort chain perfectly. "And how long would this arrangement need to last?" Marcus asked, his business mind already calculating the costs and benefits. "1 year," Harrison said firmly. "A real marriage, not just a piece of paper. You live together, attend social functions as a couple, the whole performance." Marcus drained his whiskey, feeling the burn as it went down. Around the table, his friends watched with the intensity of spectators at a gladiator match. He thought about his empty penthouse, his string of meaningless relationships, the way his life had become as predictable as a Swiss watch. "Deal," he said, extending his hand to Harrison. "But I choose who." "Agreed," Harrison shook his hand firmly. "But we get to approve your choice. No cheating with some hidden beauty." As Marcus walked through the city streets that night, his mind raced with possibilities. He'd built his fortune on taking calculated risks, on seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles. This bet was just another business transaction, he told himself. Find the right person, make the arrangement mutually beneficial, complete the terms, collect his prize. He paused outside a small bakery, its warm light spilling onto the sidewalk like honey. Through the window, he could see someone working late, flour dusting their apron as they kneaded dough with practiced hands. Something about the scene struck him as authentic, in a way his world rarely was anymore. The next morning, Marcus found himself returning to the bakery, drawn by an impulse he couldn't quite name. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon filled the air as he pushed open the door, a small bell announcing his arrival. Behind the counter stood a woman whose beauty was unlike anything he'd encountered in his circles. Where his usual companions were sharp angles and artificial perfection, she was soft curves and natural warmth. Her hair was pulled back in a practical bun, her face free of makeup, and when she smiled at him, it reached her eyes in a way that made his chest tighten unexpectedly. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent he couldn't place. "Can I help you?" Marcus found himself momentarily speechless, a rare occurrence for someone who commanded boardrooms with ease. This woman was exactly what Harrison had challenged him to find, someone who didn't belong in his world, someone who would shock his social circle. But standing there, breathing in the scent of vanilla and seeing the genuine kindness in her eyes, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: uncertainty. Yes, he managed, his usual smooth confidence deserting him. "What would you recommend?" She studied him for a moment, taking in his expensive suit and the way he clearly didn't belong in her humble bakery. "Are you looking for something sweet or substantial?" she asked, and Marcus found himself wondering if she was talking about more than just pastries. "I'm not sure anymore," he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. Her smile widened, and she reached for a small box. "Then let me choose for you. Sometimes the best surprises come when we're not looking for them." As she carefully selected various pastries, Marcus watched her hands move with the kind of grace that came from loving what you did. When she handed him the box, their fingers brushed for just a moment, and he felt something electric pass between them. "I'm Elena," she said, and the name sounded like music to his ears. "Marcus," he replied, then found himself adding, "I think I'll be coming here often." "We open early," she said with a laugh that made his heart skip. "But I suspect you're not usually up with the sun." As Marcus walked back to his office, the box of pastries in his hand, he realized his carefully calculated bet had become something far more complicated. Elena wasn't just a means to win a wager. She was a woman who had managed to crack something open inside him with nothing more than flour-dusted hands and an honest smile. But the bet was already in motion, and his friends expected results. He would have to find a way to approach Eleanor, to convince her to marry him without revealing the truth about why. The thought made him uncomfortable in a way business deals never did. That evening, as he sat in his penthouse looking out at the city lights, Marcus found himself thinking not about the vineyard he stood to win, but about the way Elena's eyes had sparkled when she laughed. He'd started this as a game, but something told him the stakes had just become much higher than he'd ever anticipated. Marcus returned to Elena's bakery the next morning, and the morning after that. Each visit, he told himself, was strategic reconnaissance, learning about his target, understanding what would motivate her to accept his proposal. But as the days passed, he found himself lingering longer, drawn into conversations that had nothing to do with his bet and everything to do with the way Elena's face lit up when she talked about her passion for baking. "You know, most of my customers grab their coffee and run," Elena observed one morning as Marcus sat at the small table by the window, slowly savoring a croissant that melted on his tongue like butter and dreams. "You actually seem to enjoy being here." "Your food is exceptional," Marcus replied, which was true enough. In his world of expensive restaurants and celebrity chefs, he'd forgotten that the best flavors often came from the simplest places. "Thank you," she blushed, wiping her hands on her apron. "I learned from my grandmother. She always said that food made with love tastes different from food made just to fill stomachs." Marcus found himself studying her as she spoke, noting the way her eyes softened when she mentioned her grandmother, the slight tilt of her head when she was thinking. In his business dealings, he was expert at reading people, finding their weaknesses and desires. But with Elena, every conversation revealed new layers he hadn't expected. "Tell me about her," he said, genuinely curious. Elena's face brightened as she pulled up a chair across from him. "She came here from Italy with nothing but a sourdough starter and a dream, built this bakery from nothing, worked 18-hour days until she could afford to hire help. She taught me that good bread requires patience. You can't rush the process." "And what about you?" Marcus asked. "What are your dreams?" The question seemed to catch her off guard, and for a moment her confident facade flickered. I suppose I dream of expanding, maybe opening a second location or Well, it sounds silly, but I've always wanted to teach cooking classes, share what my grandmother taught me. That doesn't sound silly at all, Marcus said, and meant it. What's stopping you? Elena gestured around the small bakery with a rueful smile. Money, mostly. Dreams are. Expensive. And I'm already working every hour I can to keep this place running. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, an uncomfortable recognition of opportunity mixed with guilt. Here was a woman whose dreams were modest and genuine, talking to a man who could make them all come true with a single phone call. The irony wasn't lost on him. Over the following weeks, Marcus found himself becoming a regular fixture at the bakery. He learned that Eleanor lived alone in the apartment, above the shop, that she sent money to her sick mother in Italy every month, that she'd never been married because she'd never met someone who understood her dedication to her work. Most men want a woman who's available whenever they call, she explained one afternoon as they walked through the nearby park. Marcus had suggested the walk after noticing her exhaustion, and she'd agreed only after closing the bakery for the day. They don't understand that a business is like a child. It needs constant attention to thrive. Have you ever considered a partnership? Marcus asked carefully. Someone who could help you grow? Elena stopped walking and turned to look at him, her expression suddenly guarded. What kind of partnership are you talking about, Marcus? For a moment, Marcus felt exposed, as if she could see right through his expensive suit to the calculating businessman beneath. But then her expression softened, and he realized she was asking about business. Partnerships, not the marriage he was building toward. I know some investors, he said, which was technically true. He was an investor himself. People who might be interested in helping you expand. I appreciate the thought, Elena replied, starting to walk again. But I've learned to be careful about offers that seem too good to be true. My grandmother used to say that when someone offers you everything you want, you should ask yourself what they want in return. Her words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Here he was, preparing to offer her everything she dreamed of, and she was already suspicious of his motives. The guilt he'd been trying to ignore began to gnaw at him more insistently. That evening, Marcus met Harrison and the others at their usual table. His friends were eager for updates on his progress with the bet. So when do we meet this mystery woman? Harrison asked, signaling the waiter for another round. You've been surprisingly secretive about your choice. Soon, Marcus replied, though the thought of introducing Eleanor to his friends filled him with an unexpected protectiveness. He could already imagine their reactions, their barely concealed amusement at her simple clothing and genuine manner. She must be something special to keep the great Marcus Rothwell interested for this long, teased another friend, Jonathan. Usually your relationships last about as long as a business meeting. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Elena is different. Elena? Harrison raised an eyebrow. Foreign, I hope. That would really shock your mother. Italian heritage, Marcus said reluctantly. She owns a bakery. The table erupted in laughter, and Marcus felt his protective instincts flare. A baker! Jonathan wiped his eyes. Oh, this is perfect. I can already see your mother's face when you bring home a woman covered in flour. She's not just a baker, Marcus said coldly. She's a businesswoman. She built her bakery. From nothing. The laughter died down as his friends recognized the warning tone in his voice. Harrison studied him with shrewd eyes. You're not getting attached, are you, Marcus? This is supposed to be a bet, not a love story. Of course not, Marcus lied smoothly. I'm simply appreciating the challenge. But as he walked home that night, Marcus couldn't shake Harrison's words. Was he getting attached? The thought should have alarmed him, but instead, he found himself remembering. The way Elena's eyes crinkled when she laughed, the passion in her voice when she talked about her grandmother's recipes. The next morning brought an unexpected complication. As Marcus approached the bakery, he saw a man in an expensive suit standing outside, peering through the window. Something about the man's posture set Marcus on edge. Inside the bakery, he found Elena looking unusually flustered, her usual warm smile absent. Everything all right? Marcus asked. Though he could see, it clearly wasn't. Eleanor glanced toward the window where the man was still lurking. My landlord sent someone to assess the property. Apparently there's been an offer to buy the building. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What does that mean for you? It means I might lose everything, Elena said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. The new owners want to convert the building into luxury condos. They're offering to buy out my lease, but it's not nearly enough to start. Over somewhere else. Marcus looked out at the man in the suit, his business instincts immediately recognizing a predator circling vulnerable prey. Without thinking, he said, "What if I told you there was another way?" Eleanor turned to him, hope and skepticism warring in her eyes. "What do you mean?" This was it, his opening, the perfect opportunity to make his proposal seem like salvation rather than calculation. But looking into Elena's trusting face, Marcus felt something twist in his stomach. "There are arrangements that could protect you," he said carefully. "Legal partnerships that would give you security." "Marcus," Elena stepped closer to him, her voice soft but serious. "I appreciate your concern, I really do, but I've learned to be suspicious when my problems suddenly have simple solutions." Before Marcus could respond, the man outside pushed open the door, his smile as fake as his expensive cologne. "Miss Rossi, I'm David Chen from Meridian Properties. I believe my assistant called about scheduling an assessment." Eleanor straightened and Marcus saw steel beneath her gentle exterior. "I'm not interested in selling, Mr. Chen. I thought I made that clear." "Everyone has a price, Miss Rossi," Chen replied smoothly, "and I'm authorized to offer very generous terms." "The answer is still no." Chen's smile never wavered, but his eyes hardened. "I understand you're emotional about this place, but let's be realistic. You're a single woman running a small business in an increasingly expensive market. How long can you realistically hold on?" Marcus felt his temper flare at the condescending tone. "I think the lady made her position clear." Chen turned to Marcus, as if noticing him for the first time. "And you are?" "Someone who believes in honoring a lady's wishes," Marcus replied, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had intimidated countless business rivals. For the first time, Chen's confidence flickered. He studied Marcus more carefully, taking in the expensive suit and the unmistakable bearing of someone accustomed to wielding power. "Well," Chen said finally, "the offer stands. When you change your mind, and you will, here's my card." After he left, Eleanor slumped against the counter, suddenly looking fragile in a way that made Marcus want to wrap her in his arms and promise that everything would be all right. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," she said. "I don't know what I'm going to do." This was Marcus's moment. He could swoop in now, offer to solve all her problems in exchange for marriage. She was vulnerable, grateful for his support against Chen. It would be easy to frame his proposal as a mutually beneficial arrangement. Instead, he heard himself saying, "You don't have to decide anything right now. Sometimes the best solutions come when we least expect them." Eleanor looked up at him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that made his chest tighten. Not just gratitude, but trust. Real, genuine trust, the kind he hadn't experienced in years. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know why you care about helping me, but thank you." As Marcus walked back to his office, his phone buzzing with business calls and his schedule packed with meetings, he realized that somewhere along the way, his carefully calculated bet had become something else entirely. He was falling for Elena Rossi, the baker, who made him remember what authenticity looked like. But the bet was still active. His friends were expecting results and Elena was running out of time to save her bakery. Marcus found himself at a crossroads he'd never faced before. He could win the bet and potentially lose Elena's trust forever, or he could abandon the wager and risk losing both the vineyard and his reputation among his peers. That night, as he stood in his penthouse looking out at the city lights, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He would tell Elena the truth about who he was and make his proposal honest, not as part of a bet, but as a man who had found something precious and didn't want to lose it. The question was whether Elena would believe him, or if his deception had already cost him the one thing he'd never known he wanted, a chance at real love. Marcus spent a sleepless night pacing his penthouse, rehearsing what he would say to Eleanor. Each version of the truth sounded worse than the last. How could he explain that their relationship had started as a cruel bet? How could he make her understand that somewhere between that first morning in her bakery and now, everything had changed? Dawn was breaking over the city when Marcus finally made his way to Elena's bakery. He found her already at work, flour dusting her apron as she kneaded dough with more force than usual. Her movements were sharp, almost angry, and Marcus realized the stress of potentially losing her business was taking its toll. "You're here early," she said without looking up, her voice strained. I couldn't sleep, Marcus admitted. Eleanor, we need to talk. She finally looked at him, and he saw exhaustion in her eyes that went beyond physical tiredness. If this is about your investor friends, I'm not interested in charity, Marcus. It's not charity, he said quickly, then caught himself. Actually, that's what I need to talk to you about. Please, just give me 5 minutes. Eleanor studied his face, seeming to recognize something different in his demeanor. She wiped her hands on her apron and nodded toward the small table by the window. Marcus sat across from her, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to find the right words. Eleanor, I haven't been completely honest with you about who I am. Her body went rigid. What do you mean? My full name is Marcus Rothwell. I own Rothwell Industries. The color drained from Elena's face. Everyone in the city knew the Rothwell name. It was synonymous with wealth, power, and ruthless business practices. You're that Marcus Rothwell, she whispered. The one who tears down historic buildings to put up luxury hotels. The one who bought out half the restaurants in the financial district. Marcus felt each accusation like a physical blow, seeing himself through her eyes for the first time. Yes, but Elena, please let me explain. She stood abruptly, backing away from the table. Explain what? That you've been lying to me? That you've been pretending to be someone you're not? I never pretended to be someone else, Marcus said desperately, rising to follow her. I just didn't tell you about my business. Your business of destroying small businesses like mine. Eleanor's voice was rising, and Marcus could see tears gathering in her eyes. Is this some kind of sick game to you? Get close to the little baker before you crush her dreams? No. Marcus's voice cracked with emotion. Eleanor, you have to believe me. Yes, I came here initially for the wrong reasons, but everything changed. You changed me. Eleanor laughed bitterly. Changed you? People like you don't change, Marcus. You just get better at manipulating people. Marcus felt his world crumbling around him. This was going worse than his worst-case scenario. Please, just let me explain everything. Yes, I came here because of a bet. A bet? Elena's voice was barely a whisper, but the hurt in it was deafening. Marcus closed his eyes, knowing he had to tell her everything now. My friends bet me that I wouldn't marry someone outside my social circle, someone who would shock them. The silence that followed was the loudest sound Marcus had ever heard. When he opened his eyes, Elena was staring at him with a mixture of disgust and heartbreak that made him wish he could disappear. You were going to marry me to win a bet, she said, each word carefully, controlled. You were going to make me fall in love with you, marry me, and parade me around like some kind of trophy, to prove a point to your rich friends. It wasn't like that, Marcus pleaded, taking a step toward her. Maybe it started that way. But I fell in love with you, Elena. Really, truly in love. The bet doesn't matter anymore. Get out, Elena said quietly. Elena, please. Get out, she screamed, her composure finally breaking. Get out of my bakery and never come back. Marcus stood there for a moment, wanting to say more, to somehow fix what he had broken, but the pain in Elena's eyes told him that some wounds couldn't be healed with words. He turned and walked out, the sound of Elena's sobs following him onto the street. For the next week, Marcus threw himself into work, trying to forget the look of betrayal in Elena's eyes. His friends called constantly, eager to hear about the progress of the bet, but Marcus ignored them all. He'd lost his appetite, barely slept, and found himself walking past the bakery at odd hours, hoping to catch a glimpse of Elena. The bakery remained closed for 3 days. When it finally reopened, Marcus could see Elena through the window, but she looked like a shadow of herself. Her usual warm smile was gone, replaced by a hollow professionalism as she served her customers. On the 4th day, Marcus received an unexpected visitor in his office. Harrison walked in without being announced, his usual cocky demeanor replaced by something more serious. You look terrible, Harrison observed, settling into the chair across from Marcus's desk. Thank you for that astute observation, Marcus replied dryly. The bet's off, Harrison said suddenly. Marcus looked up sharply. What? I said the bet's off. I talked to Elena. Marcus felt his blood freeze. You what? I went to her bakery yesterday, wanted to see what kind of woman had managed to turn my ruthless friend into a lovesick fool. Harrison leaned back in his chair. She's not what I expected. What did you tell her? Marcus demanded, half rising from his chair. The truth. That the bet was my idea. that I pushed you into it, that you tried to back out several times in recent weeks." Harrison's expression was unusually serious. "She didn't seem surprised to hear from me. Apparently, she'd already figured out who your friends were." Marcus slumped back in his chair. "She must hate me even more. Now, actually, she asked me something interesting," Harrison continued. "She wanted to know if you had ever mentioned her to us before the night of the bet." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That you'd never mentioned anyone with the kind of reverence you showed when talking about her. That I'd never seen you protective of any woman the way you were of her." Harrison paused. "She also asked if you had taken any of our money yet." Marcus frowned. "What money?" "The side bets." "Marcus, don't tell me you didn't know." Harrison looked almost embarrassed. "After that first night, word spread. Half the club placed side bets on whether you'd actually go through with it. The pot is up to nearly $1 million now." Marcus felt sick. "I never wanted any money from this ridiculous bet." "I know. That's what I told her." Harrison stood up. "Look, Marcus, I've known you since university. I've seen you be ruthless, calculating, even cruel when it came to business. But I've never seen you in love before." "It doesn't matter," Marcus said bitterly. "I've lost her." "Have you?" Harrison asked. "Because she asked one more question that makes me think otherwise." Marcus looked up hopefully. She wanted to know if there was any way to make the bet null and void, any way to erase it completely, as if it never happened. Before Marcus could respond, Harrison was gone, leaving him alone with a spark of hope he was afraid to nurture. That evening, Marcus found himself standing outside Elena's bakery as she was closing up. She saw him through the window and hesitated for a long moment before unlocking the door. "What do you want, Marcus?" she asked, but her voice lacked the venom it had carried before. "I want to make this right," he said. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try to earn your forgiveness." Elena studied his face, and Marcus saw some of the walls she'd built beginning to crack. "Your friend Harrison came to see me." "I know, he told me. He said some interesting things about you, about how you've been different since we met." She crossed her arms. "He also told me about the money." Marcus winced. "Elena, I swear to you I never wanted—" "I know," she interrupted. "He made that clear. He also said you'd been trying to find ways to back out of the bet for weeks." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. "Why didn't you just tell me who you were?" "From the beginning," Elena asked finally. "Because I knew you'd never give someone like me a chance," Marcus admitted. "I knew you'd see the reputation, the wealth, the way I've lived my life, and you'd run." "You were probably right," Elena said softly, "but lying to me was worse." I know, and I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than I've ever been about anything in my life." Marcus took a deep breath. "Elena, I love you. Not because of any bet, not to prove anything to anyone. I love the way you light up when you talk about your grandmother's recipes. I love how you put your whole heart into everything you do. I love that you saw something worth caring about in a man who had forgotten how to care about anything." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. "I know I don't deserve another chance," Marcus continued, "but I'm asking for one anyway. Not as Marcus Rothwell, the businessman, but as the man you helped me remember I could be." Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "The building's being sold next week," she said quietly. "I'm going to lose the bakery." "No, you're not," Marcus said firmly. "I bought the building." Elena stared at him. "You what?" "I bought it the day after Chen came here. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you without it seeming like I was trying to buy your forgiveness." "So, what happens now?" Elena asked. "You own my building. You know all my secrets. You've turned my life upside down. What's your end game, Marcus?" Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Eleanor's breath caught. "This was supposed to be part of winning a bet," Marcus said, opening the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "But I want to give it to you for a completely different reason now." He dropped to one knee right there on the sidewalk, ignoring the curious stares of passers-by. "Elena Rossi, will you marry me? Not because of any bet or arrangement or business deal, but because you've shown me what it means to love someone more than myself, because you've made me want to be the man you believed I could be." Elena stared down at him, tears streaming down her face. "You're doing this all wrong," she whispered. Marcus's heart sank. "Elena, you're supposed to ask me somewhere romantic, not outside my bakery with flour in my hair and exhaustion in my eyes. Elena, You could be covered in mud in the middle of a hurricane, and you'd still be the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. Elena laughed through her tears, a sound that was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. You really mean that, don't you? Every word. Elena was quiet for a long moment, looking down at the ring, then at Marcus's hopeful face. What about your friends? What about your reputation? What will people say when Marcus Rothwell marries a simple baker? I don't care what they say, Marcus said fiercely. I've spent my entire life worrying about what people think, building a reputation that means nothing if I don't have you to share it with. My friends will have to accept you, or they're not really friends. And if society can't handle the fact that I've fallen in love with the most amazing woman I've ever met, then society can go to hell. Eleanor knelt down on the sidewalk beside him, taking his face in her flour-dusted hands. You hurt me, Marcus. You hurt me badly. I know. If I say yes, if I agree to marry you, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that from now on we tell each other the truth, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when we're afraid of how the other will react. No more secrets, no more lies, no more games. I promise, Marcus said without hesitation. Elena, I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of your trust. Elena smiled, the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from her since the truth came out. Then yes, Marcus Rothwell, I'll marry you. Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her right there on the sidewalk, not caring who was watching. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. I love you, Eleanor whispered against his lips. I love you too, Marcus replied, more than I ever thought possible. As they stood up, still holding each other, Eleanor looked at her ring sparkling in the evening light. So what happens now? Do we have a long engagement? A big society wedding? Marcus grinned, looking more relaxed and happy than Elena had ever seen him. Actually, I have a better idea. There's a beautiful vineyard in Tuscany that's about to become available. I know the owner is looking to sell. Elena raised an eyebrow. And why would that be relevant to us? Because I thought maybe we could honeymoon there. And if you fell in love with it, maybe we could make an offer. You could learn traditional Italian baking techniques. Maybe start those cooking classes you dreamed about. What about your business, your life here? Marcus shrugged. I can run a business from anywhere, but more importantly, I've realized that my life isn't here. It's wherever you are. Elena stood on her tiptoes and kissed him again. You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just another rich man slumming it in my little bakery. And now? Now I think you're just a man who got lost and needed help finding his way home. Marcus held her tighter. And did I find it? My way home? Eleanor smiled, the same warm smile that had captivated him from the very first day. Yes, Marcus, you found it. 6 months later, Eleanor and Marcus were married in a small ceremony in the garden behind the bakery. Harrison served as Marcus's best man, having become one of Elena's most devoted customers and genuine friends. The guest list was small but meaningful. Elena's mother, who had flown in from Italy, a handful. Of Marcus's business associates, who had proven themselves to be true friends, and all the regular customers from the bakery who had become like family to Elena. Instead of an expensive reception at a luxury hotel, they celebrated with homemade food from Elena's kitchen, the same recipes her grandmother had passed down to her. Marcus's high society friends, who had initially come to gawk at his unusual bride, found themselves charmed by Elena's warmth and authenticity. More than one commented that they'd never seen Marcus look truly happy before. So what happened to that bet anyway? Elena asked Harrison during the reception as they watched Marcus help her elderly neighbor to a chair. Harrison grinned and pulled out a check, handing it to Elena. The entire pot, all the side bets, everything. Marcus insisted it should go to you as an apology from all of us for treating your relationship like entertainment. Elena looked at the check and gasped. It was enough to expand the bakery, open the cooking school she dreamed of, and still have money left over for a substantial emergency fund. I can't take this, she said, trying to hand the check back. You have to, Harrison replied. Marcus won't speak to any of us if you don't. Besides, we figure it's the least we can do. That bet was the stupidest thing I've ever talked anyone into, and also the best thing that ever happened to Marcus. Eleanor looked across the garden at her new husband, who was currently being lectured by her mother about the proper way to fold ravioli. He caught her eye and winked, and Elena felt her heart flutter the same way it had that first morning in the bakery. "You know what the funny thing is," Elena said to Harrison. "He would have won that bet anyway." "How do you figure?" Elena smiled, watching as Marcus submitted to her mother's ravioli lesson with good humor. "Because he did marry someone who shocked your social circle. The Marcus I fell in love with isn't the same man who walked into my bakery that first morning. The man I married is someone who puts love before profit, who values authenticity over appearance, who isn't afraid to get flour on his expensive suits. That man would definitely shock the people who thought they knew Marcus Rothwell." Harrison followed her gaze and nodded thoughtfully. "You know, you're absolutely right. You did change him." "We changed each other," Elena corrected. "That's what real love does." As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Marcus and Elena stood together in the bakery, surrounded by the remnants of their wedding celebration. Elena was still in her simple white dress, though it now bore evidence of the evening's festivities: wine stains from enthusiastic toasts, flour smudges from her mother's impromptu ravioli demonstration, and grass stains from dancing barefoot in the garden. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, pulling his wife close. Elena looked around, at her little bakery, then up at the man who had turned her world upside down and somehow made it better than she'd ever imagined possible. "Only one," she said with a mischievous smile. Marcus's face fell. "What?" "I regret that it took you so long to find me. Think of all the mornings we could have spent together, all the conversations we could have had, all the bread we could have baked." Marcus laughed, relief and love shining in his eyes. "Well, Mrs. Rothwell, we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." "Yes," Eleanor agreed, standing on her tiptoes to kiss her husband. "We do." Outside, the city continued its restless pace, full of people chasing dreams and making mistakes, and finding love in the most unexpected places. But inside the little bakery, a millionaire and a baker had found something more valuable than all the money in the world. They had found each other, and in doing so, had discovered that sometimes the best prizes are the ones you never knew you were looking for. The bet that had brought them together was long forgotten, replaced by something infinitely more precious: a love built on honesty, nurtured by respect, and sweetened by the understanding that the best things in life aren't won or earned or bought. They're shared, one perfect moment at a time, with the person who makes you want to be better than you ever thought you could be. And if you walked past that little bakery on any given morning, you'd still see Elena behind the counter, flour dusting her apron, smile lighting up her face. But now you'd also see Marcus at the small table by the window, reading the morning paper and stealing glances at his wife, looking like a man who had everything he'd ever wanted and had finally learned to appreciate it. Because sometimes the most unexpected bets lead to the most beautiful victories. The Tuscan sun painted golden streaks across the rolling hills as Elena wiped the flour from her hands and stepped out onto the terrace of their villa. Below her, rows of grapevines stretched toward the horizon, heavy with fruit that would soon become the wine that had made their vineyard one of the most sought-after destinations in Italy. "The last class finished 20 minutes ago," Marcus called from the kitchen, where he was cleaning the remnants of the day's cooking lesson. His sleeves were rolled up, his expensive shirt stained with tomato sauce and olive oil, and Eleanor had never found him more attractive. "How did the newlyweds from Germany do with the pasta?" Elena asked, settling into the chair beside him as he joined her on the terrace. "They managed not to burn down the kitchen, which I'm counting as a victory," Marcus replied with a grin, "though I think they were more interested in feeding each other than actually learning the technique." Elena laughed, the sound carrying across the vineyard like music. Their cooking school had become wildly successful, drawing couples from around the world who wanted to learn traditional Italian techniques while staying in the romantic setting of a working vineyard. What had started as Elena's dream had grown into something neither of them had imagined possible. "The food critic from Milan called," Marcus said, producing a bottle of their own wine and 2 glasses. "She wants to feature us in next month's issue. Apparently, word about your grandmother's ragu recipe is spreading faster than we can keep up with." "Nonna would be so proud," Elena said softly, accepting the glass he offered. "She always said that good food was meant to bring people together, not just fill stomachs." Marcus raised his glass in a toast. "To your grandmother, who gave us more than just recipes. She gave us the foundation for all of this. They clinked glasses and sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun begin its descent behind the hills. This had become their favorite time of day. When the last cooking class had ended, the vineyard workers had gone home, and they could simply be Marcus and Eleanor, husband and wife, sharing the peace they'd built together. "I got a letter from Harrison today," Marcus said eventually, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "He and Catherine are finally engaged." Elena raised an eyebrow in surprise. Catherine was Harrison's assistant, a brilliant woman who had been quietly in love with him for years while he chased after socialites and models. What changed his mind? Apparently he realized he'd been looking for love in all the wrong places, Marcus said with a meaningful look at his wife. "Sound familiar?" Vaguely," Elena teased. "What else did he say?" Marcus opened the letter, his expression growing more serious as he read. "He wants to know if we'd consider hosting their wedding here. He says he's tired of the artificial world he's been living in, and he wants to start his marriage somewhere real." Eleanor considered this, remembering the arrogant man who had initiated the bet that brought her and Marcus together. Over the years, Harrison had become a genuine friend, and his transformation had been almost as dramatic as Marcus's. "What do you think?" Marcus asked. "I think your grandmother would have said that everyone deserves a chance at happiness," Eleanor replied. "Even men who make foolish bets." Marcus chuckled. "I'll write back and tell him yes, though I'm going to insist that, Catherine plans everything. Harrison's taste in wedding planning is probably as questionable as his taste in bets used to be." As if summoned by their conversation about the past, Elena's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and smiled. "What is it?" Marcus asked, noticing her expression. "A message from Maria," Eleanor said, showing him the photo on her screen. It was a picture of a young woman in a chef's coat, beaming as she stood in front of a small restaurant. She opened her own place today. Maria had been one of their first students, a shy woman from Brazil who had come to their cooking school after a difficult divorce. She'd stayed for 3 months, learning not just cooking techniques, but how to believe in herself again. Eleanor had kept in touch with many of their students over the years, but Maria held a special place in her heart. "She looks happy," Marcus observed. "She looks free," Eleanor corrected. "There's a difference." Marcus understood. He remembered what it felt like to be successful but not free, wealthy but not happy. He'd found his freedom in this vineyard, in Elena's arms, in the simple act of creating something beautiful together. "Speaking of freedom," Marcus said, reaching into his other pocket, "I have something for you." Elena looked puzzled as he handed her a small wrapped package. "What's the occasion?" "Do I need an occasion to give my wife a gift?" Marcus asked, but Elena could see the excitement in his eyes. She unwrapped the package carefully, revealing a small leather journal with her initials embossed on the cover. When she opened it, she found the first page filled with Marcus's familiar handwriting. "The story of Eleanor's grandmother's recipes," she read aloud, then looked up at Marcus with tears in her eyes. "Marcus, what is this?" "I've been collecting all the stories you've told me about your grandmother, about the recipes she taught you, about the wisdom she passed down," Marcus explained. "I thought it was time to write them down properly. Not just the recipes, but the stories behind them, the love they represent." Elena flipped through the pages, seeing Marcus's careful documentation of conversations they'd had over candlelit dinners, quiet mornings in the kitchen, lazy afternoons in the vineyard. He'd captured not just her grandmother's recipes, but the essence of what they meant, the connection between generations, the way food could carry love across time and distance. "This is beautiful," Elena whispered. "But why now?" Marcus took her hand, his thumb tracing over her wedding ring. "Because I realized that the stories you tell about your grandmother are the same kind of stories our students will tell about their time here someday. About the recipes they learned, yes, but also about the love they found, the confidence they gained, the dreams they discovered they were brave enough to pursue." Eleanor felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "You want to publish this?" "I want to share it," Marcus said, "with our students, with anyone who believes that food is about more than just sustenance. Your grandmother's wisdom shouldn't be limited to just our kitchen." Eleanor closed the journal and held it against her chest. She would have loved this idea. She always said that recipes were meant to be shared, not hoarded. "Then we'll make it beautiful," Marcus promised. "We'll include photographs of the vineyard, of our kitchen, of you teaching. We'll make it a celebration of everything she built and everything we're building on that foundation." They sat together as the sun continued to set, Elena's head on Marcus's shoulder, the journal in her lap. Around them, the vineyard buzzed with the quiet activity of evening, birds settling in for the night, the distant sound of their neighbor's dog barking, the gentle rustling of grape leaves in the breeze. "Do you ever miss it?" Elena asked suddenly. "The old life, I mean. The business deals, the city, the excitement of making millions?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the adrenaline," he admitted, "but I don't miss the emptiness. I don't miss feeling like I was successful but not significant. And now I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm meant to do, with exactly the right person." Marcus pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "We're creating something that will outlast us, Elena. Not just the vineyard or the cooking school, but the memories we're helping people make, the confidence we're helping them find, the love we're celebrating every day." Elena smiled, thinking about the couples who had stayed at their villa, the students who had returned home with new skills and renewed spirits, the way their simple dream of teaching cooking had grown into something that touched lives around the world. "I have news too," Elena said, her voice suddenly shy. Marcus pulled back to look at her, sensing the change in her tone. "What kind of news?" Elena took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "The kind that means we're going to need to add a high chair to our kitchen table." Marcus's eyes widened, his face cycling through surprise, joy, and overwhelming love in the space of a few seconds. "Elena, are you saying—" "I'm saying that in about 7 months, our cooking classes are going to have a very small, very loud assistant," Elena said, laughing at the expression on her husband's face. Marcus stood up so quickly he nearly knocked over his wineglass, then pulled Elena into his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. "A baby," Marcus whispered against her ear as he set her down gently. "We're going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Elena asked, suddenly nervous despite his obvious joy. "Happy?" Marcus cupped her face in his hands, looking into the eyes that had first taught him what love really meant. "Elena, I'm so happy I can barely breathe. I'm so grateful for this life, for you, for everything we've built together. And now, we get to share it all with our child." They held each other as the last light faded from the sky, the vineyard settling into peaceful silence around them. In the distance, they could see the lights of the small town where they'd become part of the community, where Elena's Italian had improved. Enough for her to gossip with the local grandmothers about whose tomatoes were the best this year. "What do you think your grandmother would say about all this?" Marcus asked, as they finally headed inside, Eleanor's hand in his, the journal tucked under her other arm. Elena smiled, her free hand drifting to her stomach. "I think she'd say that the best recipes take time to develop, but when you get them right, they nourish people for generations." "And what about the bet that started it?" "All?" Marcus asked with a grin. "What would she say about that?" Elena pretended to consider this seriously. "I think she'd say that sometimes the most foolish decisions lead to the most beautiful outcomes, and that any man stupid enough to bet on love probably deserves to lose his heart completely." Marcus laughed, pulling his wife closer as they entered their warm, welcoming home. "Well then, it's a good thing I'm the luckiest fool in Tuscany." Outside, the vineyard slept under a canopy of stars, the grapes growing sweeter with each passing night, just as the love between Marcus and Eleanor had grown deeper and richer with each passing day. They had built something beautiful from the ashes of a cruel bet, a life, a business, a legacy, and now a family that would carry forward the lessons they'd learned about love, authenticity, and the courage to be vulnerable with another person. And in years to come, when their child asked about how mommy and daddy fell in love, they would tell the truth, about mistakes and forgiveness, about bets and second chances, about finding home in the most unexpected person. But mostly they would tell their child about the transformative power of love, and how sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most imperfect beginnings. Thank you for watching today's story. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel to relive the magic of the 80s every day with our heartfelt stories. May God bless you and your family, and don't forget to click on the video popping up on the screen right now. It's another totally rad story you won't want to miss. See you in the next video, and stay awesome.